Trump has just removed Hitler 2.0. Think on this. So much of the world's misery at the hands of tyrants was the result of not dealing with them before they took power. So many of the tragedies in the world and all the wars were avoidable, but we did not act when we could have. Well, hello, folks. Welcome to a special edition of Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Due to the Iranian conflict that arose over the weekend, I wanted to get this message to you, given all the ridiculous statements by some of the American haters, both domestic and foreign. You know, tyrants, like weeds, grow and spread when the political gardeners lack the will to till the garden. As with weeds in the garden, lest they be pulled up, the crop will be destroyed. Likewise, tyrants are always ready to grow and threaten the world when those we elect lack the will and wisdom to remove them. Thank God we have been blessed with a courageous, American-loving, and war-hating president in Donald Trump. Listen carefully. President Trump is ending the evil that President Jimmy Carter started in the late 1970s. Yes, I lived it. I lived at the time when Carter helped create the terrorist state of Iran. Trump has just removed Hitler 2.0. Let me repeat so there is no mistake in translation. President Carter was the one who created the terrorist state of Iran when he backed the Islamist radical Khomeini, leaving exile in Paris to go to Tehran, which ended in a revolution and the takeover of the country by radical Islamists 47 years ago. Back then, Iran was like many Western nations in Europe, but Khomeini and his religious radicals destroyed Iran, as they are trying to do to many countries in Europe today. Islam is incompatible with the West. It is an incompatible culture with Western culture. It is a weed that must be pulled up. Trump has had the wisdom and courage to see that and has done what 6 other presidents were too cowardly to do, and that includes both Republican and Democrats. Carter betrayed the Western-style leader in Iran at that time, which was the Shah Pahlavi. He was a friend of the U.S., and the Iranian people were Western-minded and friendly to America. Carter's policies destroyed that. Shortly thereafter, the radicals seized our embassy and took the staff hostage. I despised Carter. I despise him today and what he did to our country. Until Biden, he was considered the worst president in American history. So with that bit of history, in comes Trump to bring freedom back to Iran and to destroy the threat to America and the rest of Western civilization. Trump has conducted another incredibly successful removal of an evil tyrant responsible for thousands of American deaths and others around the world. He has protected America from a future nuclear attack from Iran. Both Democrat and Republican leaders of the past failed to protect our country. Let me remind you of a little more history here. We could have prevented Russia from going communist, but passed up the opportunity. Consequently, the communist dictators in Russia, that is Lenin and Stalin and others, murdered around 25 million of its own people and hundreds of thousands around the world, including Americans. I lived through the Cold War, and I remember as a child having air raid drills in school. We had bomb shelters in our homes and suffered as well with the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Russia had placed nuclear weapons in Cuba, just 90 miles off of our coast. Yes, the inaction of our leaders caused great harm. Before Russia acquired Cuba as a client state, we allowed Cuba to become communist and could have easily made Cuba the Caribbean paradise. We failed again and paid the price. That time we were within hours of World War III, and it would have been nuclear at that time. Here's another missed opportunity. We could have kept China from going communist, but did not back up Chinese General Chiang Kai-shek, a democratic, freedom-loving leader, but didn't give him the backup that he needed. Now China is our biggest threat. In fact, they now have a larger navy than we do. Let's not forget another Western coward, Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, a wimp of a man and a coward who appeased Hitler, that ended in World War II. With 26 million who lost their lives, 500,000 American lives were lost. Even then, America wouldn't get involved until Pearl Harbor. Nazi Germany was months away from a nuclear bomb. Let me repeat that. Just think of that. When we entered the war, Nazi Germany was on its way to having a nuclear bomb. Can you imagine if Hitler had had a nuclear bomb? We could have stopped Hitler, but weak and ambivalent men were in control. That ended in World War II, and it was avoidable. Now, you see, it is our hesitancy, cowardly leaders, visionless leaders, that allowed evil to advance in the world, and consequently, hundreds of thousands of Americans have lost their lives because of bad leadership. Tyrants always take advantage of weak men and weak leaders. Because of Biden, over 2 million lives have been lost in Ukraine. Trump neutralized the threat of Venezuela and is now neutralizing the threat of a nuclear Iran. Too many Americans are supportive of Democrat leftists and their inaction and indifference and cowardice. They avoid taking timely action to protect us against the evil that confronts America and the world. Just as in the past, so much misery and death has been caused by our inaction and not weeding the world of dangerous tyrants. Now, here's a current example of America's insanity. Thankfully, in this situation, confined to New York City, they elected that Muslim Iranian-loving communist mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, who just condemned the action that we have taken against Iran. Think about this. 25 years ago, the radical Islamists and Muslims took down the World Trade Tower centers only for the New Yorkers to vote in as mayor an Islamic communist, Zohran Mamdani, and they did that last year. That's insanity, folks. On an issue very close to home for me and many Kentuckians, and what is inexcusable is the opposition by Representative Thomas Massie in Kentucky and Senator Rand Paul of Trump's actions against the number one terrorist regime, Iran. As I have said before, Rand is stuck back in the 1700s. He recently quoted John Adams as part of his excuse of opposing the bold and defensive and needed action Trump is taking. Let me remind Rand, John Adams knew nothing about intercontinental ballistic nuclear missiles. He had the security of 2 oceans. With the technology of today, those oceans have become creeks and small rivers. They don't give us the protection they once did. Senator Rand Paul, as well as Massie, are both caught up in utopianistic idealism of libertarianism and want to repeat the same mistakes we made with Hitler, Stalin, Mayo, and Castro. These unaccomplished representatives from Kentucky in Congress must be removed. Now, I'm going to give a little side here. This is difficult for me to talk like that about Senator Rand Paul because we have been friends. But I will not subjugate truth and dismiss truth just for the sake of friendship. These folks, Massie and Rand Paul, are not living in the real world, and they clearly have not heard nor believe Iran when they say death to America. Folks, in the last 72 hours, Iran has bombed several of its neighboring countries, even though they've been under attack by us and Israelis. They are the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. What is it that Massie and Rand Paul don't get? To my listeners in Kentucky, you'd better wake up and get to the ballot box in May to remove Massie and thereafter Rand Paul. They are constantly obstructing President Trump, who you, Kentucky voters, voted for by over 60%. So you're not being represented there by either one of them. Massie and Rand have done nothing but obstruct our president. They have no strategy for doing what is good and right for protecting America. They want to debate things to death and get nothing done. So what's my proof? 2 government shutdowns in 6 months. Now, that's at the hands of the Democrats because they want to filibuster this, and we don't have the 60 votes. We need 7 Democrats basically to vote with Republicans to be able to pass things. So we've had 2 government shutdowns in 6 months. And right now, when we need it the most, our Department of Homeland Security is shut down, and we have now the first terrorist attack in Texas, killing 2 and injuring nearly a dozen others. Massie and Rand live in a philosophy, not reality. Shame on some Kentucky voters who must wake up to the obstructionistic tactics of Massie and Rand. They have done nothing for Kentucky and nothing for our nation. Bring them home and let's replace them with real leaders. Now, you will hear these brain-dead chess players say that Congress is the only one who can declare war, yet they again forget that in the last 6 months, the government has been shut down twice because the Congress can't agree on anything. Congress has become totally ineffective to do anything these days, and these shutdowns have cost our economy billions, and all we hear from the Democrats, and many of you complain about all the time, is affordability. Well, if you're that concerned about affordability, how about stop voting for the Democrats? Let the president do his job. The solutions to our problems are so simple, and it starts with you. The American people caused the problem with affordability, as they did with allowing murderous dictators like Hitler, Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Castro, Maduro to take power and kill Americans. Consequently, over the last 100 years, over 120 million people have been murdered and executed around the world, along with hundreds of thousands of Americans. It was all preventable, folks. We failed to take action. We didn't weed the garden. And I, for one, thank President Trump for being the real and strong leader we have needed for decades. Remove from office all those who hate America and will not do what needs to be done when it's timely to do so. We can't afford to keep missing opportunities to defeat evil when it appears. With technology that can destroy the world in minutes, we can no longer delay in weeding the world garden of aspiring tyrants, and we certainly can't leave it to a Congress that get in such debates that it takes forever, and when they can't agree on anything, they just shut down the government. Think on this. So much of the world's misery at the hands of tyrants was the result of not dealing with them before they took power. So many of the tragedies in the world and all the wars were avoidable, but we did not act when we could have. And for all those naysayers and people who push against Trump's initiatives, such as against Venezuela and Iran, don't overlook the fact that this is having a big impact on China and Russia. They're watching. They are taking notes, and they are observing our military power. And it serves as a deterrent for them not to do another Ukraine or to invade Taiwan. It is a warning to them not to do as is their nature, and that is military adventurism, as Russia did in Ukraine, and now 2 million people are dead. Biden and the Americans who supported him have blood on their hands. Tyrants and terrorists see weak leaders around the world, and that encourages them to take advantage. This is the problem we have with some of the idiots in our own government. They are not visionaries, nor are they strategists. And when we have people like that in government, American soldiers die. So for my Kentucky brethren, I say send a message to Thomas Massie and to Senator Rand Paul to just shut up and get out of the president's way. Let a real president do his job. Your failed libertarian policies only encourage evil men and tyrants. I'm tired of failed utopianistic idealism. I'm also tired of Republicans playing by the rules that our enemies will never follow. Too many Republicans complain about a double standard of justice, yet they insist on playing the game and by the rules they know the Democrat left have refused to play by. Folks, it would be nice to live in a happy, carefree world where all we had to do is our jobs, take care of our homes and kids, and just enjoy life. Well, we lost that in another garden thousands of years ago, and to dream and act as if that is where we are now is delusional, psychotic, and deadly. So for now, thank God that He has blessed us with a real leader who is protecting you and your children. And you need to pray for a quick end to the Islamic regime that just murdered 32,000 of its own citizens in the last 6 months. And pray for forgiveness for our country's complicity back when Carter was president, who helped create the Iran of today. Pray for forgiveness of missing the opportunity given this country to make for a more peaceful world and thus keep our soldiers safe and alive. Given the breaking events over the weekend, I wanted to get this special edition of the podcast out. So until later, and with that, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.